pack organization is something that I try to do every single year. Every winter, I revisit how I set up my pack based on just some different thoughts that I had throughout the year and how I can improve that. Pack organization is something that I love to read about, different blog posts on the internet, and I love to watch videos on. And today we're going to make a video on how we organize our packs. And we want to make this video kind of an interactive forum. So if you know of any videos, or if you have a YouTube channel and want to make a video, or know of any good blog posts on how to organize a pack, put it in the comments section below, and we're going to continuously be updating the video description to include those links. So throw them below and check out the description. There's going to be some really great stuff, hopefully. And without further ado, let's jump into the pack here. So contrasting Dan's, mine's going to have a lot of stuff in it, whereas Dan's going to take more of a minimalist approach. I have the William Joseph Confluence chest pack. You're not able to get that pack anymore. William Joseph is out of business, but we actually have a video on a very similar pack, the Fish Pond Cross Currents chest pack, and we'll link that video in the description here. But jumping into it, in the front I have a little workstation. I just keep a hook file in there. Dan had said that whenever he took the fly fishing mastery course at Penn State, that was something that George Daniels really stressed, was having a hook file, especially when you're streamer fishing, in case things get dulled up. In the front compartment here, I kind of have like a little work box that you can get these things at just about any fly shop if you buy flies. We got this out west, got it from Headhunters. I keep in here some airlocks, some thingamabobbers, a couple of foam pinch-on indicators, some styrofoam indicators, a little bit of split shot. So basically a little bit of everything. And that's kind of my first stop shop for anything I need as far as suspension rigs go. I also have one of my more commonly used monofilament nylon tippets here, just a 5X. And then also have an assortment of fluorocarbon that I tend to use the most. Got a little bit of blackbird shot, so have a little bit of that in there. A couple of Dorsey yarn indicators with some rubber bands for another type of suspension nymphing. I also have in here some pinch-on indicators in 2 different sizes. We buy whole foam sheets from the craft store, sticky foam sheets, and we'll cut our own indicators. My bigger ones are more for suspension rigs, where my smaller ones are more for visibility during dry fly fishing or emerger fishing. I also have in here a sample vial. Whenever we tie flies, we have kind of a collection at our desk of some mayfly specimens that we have in some like an alcohol solution, that if I find like a really cool specimen or one that we don't have, I'll put it in here. I'll be able to take it home, preserve it, and then use that specimen to emulate some of our dry fly patterns. So a really cool thing that we like doing, and it kind of like adds a nice little touch to your fly tying area. So on the outside here, I have my New Zealand wool, my tool, and then also an alligator clip that holds a section of wool that I've been using here for the past few months. Actually, I've been using it for a long time. I also got a leader straightener on there. My nippers, these are baby fingernail clippers, and I absolutely love them because they're small, they're real lightweight, and they're really sharp. So that's something that I would recommend to anybody. Also, I have on the outside just some like some dab fly float in there that I use for greasing my leader or greasing my sighter. On the outside pockets here, I have my frog's fanny, my desiccant. That's, I think, my favorite desiccant there, because you can really work in that stuff with the brush. And then I also have kind of like just some gink, some fly float in here. This is a Scientific Anglers brand, and I'll use that to pre-treat my flies much of the time. On the other side, I have a stomach pump. Rarely use this, but occasionally it's kind of neat to see, especially when you're dry fly fishing and you just can't touch them, and you do catch one. It's kind of neat to see what they're eating. Keep that on the other side there. And then kind of go in the front main pocket here, I got a buff. As far as fly boxes go, I have my nymph box here. So I recently went to a single nymph box and kind of organize it based on weight. On every different flap, I have kind of my different weights. So my heavy stuff on one side and lighter stuff on another, organized by bead size, and it's kind of helped me to cut down on the amount of boxes that I have in my pack here. So in the future, we'd actually like to do, because there's so much I can talk about fly organization too, on some of the different methods we use. We'll do a video in the future and someday link it in the description. Also, I have my dry fly box. These are mostly my smaller dries, double-sided, organize that by pattern and by size. And then I have kind of like an assortment box. Mostly keep emergers in here and some really seasonal stuff for different hatches that I'll tie up a few patterns, just throw in here temporarily. And then I have a really small box, and this is my experimental patterns box. We love to tie flies, and you always want to try new patterns, so we'll throw those in there in the winter and then try to make this a box that we visit often just to test out some different patterns, see if there are ones that we want to put into our regular lineup. Also, something that I absolutely use all the time and I recommend to anyone is to have a little plastic baggie in the front of your pack, especially when you're going through tippet a lot. Gives you a place to put it instead of just throwing it straight into your pack. It really helps to reduce the mess that you have in there. And you just empty it every few weeks. Obviously, you can tell I haven't emptied it for some time, but the plastic bag, definitely a must-have for me in my pack. I also have some New Zealand wool up there. Okay, now onto the front again. I have my working box, CNF design box. It's a little bit of a mess right now. Keep a lot of patterns in there, and this is my go-to box most of the time. And on the front, it's actually just a magnet strip that I have glued onto the CNF. And then I have some magnets on the back of my patch, and it helps me to put some dry droppers there. All I gotta do, magnet it on, it's stuck there pretty good. Also on the front, I have a small streamer box. This is mostly like jig streamers, woolly buggers, things like that. But that's kind of my handy streamer, smaller stuff that I use the majority of the time. Also have some leader storage on the front, just some foam spools to store some really long leaders. So like some mono rig style leaders. In the front, I have my forceps. And in addition to that, I have a thermometer. It really does help, especially this time of year when the water's getting a little bit warmer. So one additional thing that I have on the front here is a way to count fish. I keep a lot of data on like an Excel spreadsheet. I count my fish throughout the year, and this helps me to not lose track. I have 10 on this, 3 on the top, and that kind of allows me to keep track of how many I've caught for the day. So let's move on to the back now, and I'll show you what I have in the back. So on the back here, I got my net on a gear keeper retractor. I have a small tripod for my camera, and at some point we're going to do a video on how we carry our camera gear in the water. That'll be linked in the description as well at some point. And I have a Tupperware container that I look at different nymph specimens if I do any kick samples. This is just made out of a French onion dip container, and they're both just kind of lashed on the back there. Working inside, I have the bag that I use to collect specimens. I'll just put this onto my net, and I'm able to do a kick sample and see what types of nymphs are in the stream. Very useful, especially if I'm fishing new waters. Inside, I got a leader wallet. I keep in here different leaders, tippet rings, things like that. I got some additional tippet, got some cider material, some additional monofilament, some heavier stuff, some streamer tippet, stuff like that. In the larger pocket, I have in here a spare spool, just carrying a different weight line. I have a headlamp for hitting some of those late night spinner falls. I have my big dry fly box. This has been a little bit depleted as the season wore on. I got some March Browns in there, green drakes, slate drakes, really just my big stuff I keep in here that I don't want to crush that hackle. Then I got my streamer box. During this time of the year, I'll keep it in the back, but as the season goes on into winter, I'll put this in the front and put my dry flies in the back. On the bottom, I got a rain jacket. This is just kind of like an emergency thing, just in case I ever need to use it, but I do have it if the situation were to warrant something like that. All right, now that you have a glimpse into my pack, let's move on to Dan's and see what he has in his.
So again, my setup is a lot different than Doug's. I kind of have a more minimalist approach. So let's just jump right into it. Starting on the outside of the pack, in the front, you'll see that I just have a little container here that I put petroleum jelly in for floating my cider. Good way to do it on a budget as well, because petroleum jelly is super cheap. This pocket over here is kind of my trash pocket. I'll put spare tippet, leader material, anything like that, anything I find trash laying on the stream, I'll throw it into that pocket as well. Looking on the side of the pack, I have golden trout nippers there attached to a zinger. And I use the magnet right here to kind of keep those close, compact, so I'm not getting line and stuff hung up on. On the other side, I have some forceps, a zinger attaching that as well so I don't lose them. And then on top, one of my favorite pieces of gear, the C&F Design patch box. So great for drying flies. And this is my working box. At the beginning of the day, what I'll do is I'll take some patterns that I know I'm very likely going to be fishing, and I will put them into my box and just kind of use that to make quick adjustments so I don't have to access the inside compartment. So moving inside of the pack, this front magnetic pocket is kind of my working station. This is the pocket I use more than any other pocket. And on the inside, you will see I have some tippet there. And then on top, I have just a little bottle holder here. I have some blue ribbon desiccant powder from Loon. Really nice stuff. I think I still prefer the Frog's Fanny, but still does a really good job. And then I also have some gink that can use to float the cider, can use to treat dry flies as well. I also keep some number 6 split shot in there if I ever want to add a little weight to my patterns. Generally, I'm adding weight at the vise. I like beaded patterns with some lead weight, but this is an option if I'm ever fishing something weightless. Similar to Doug, I have a piece of foam that I will wrap my dry droppers onto. Really easy to make changes on the fly. I have my New Zealand wool indicator kit. Highly recommend New Zealand wool. That's my favorite way to suspend flies. I keep some pinch-on indicators, which again, what we do is we go to AC Moore, we'll buy some foam with an adhesive backing, cut them into little squares. Good way to have some cheap pinch-on indicators. Another really nice way to suspend nymphs. Some small pinch-ons if I ever am having trouble seeing a dry fly. And I keep one lonely Orvis thingamabobber in there if I ever really want to bomb a heavy nymphing rig. I also have some Pat Dorsey indicators, not quite like the traditional Pat Dorsey setup where he's using really large indicators. Very small, because again, in Central PA, whenever we're fishing suspended rigs, generally we're fishing very light patterns higher up in the water column. And I found that keeping the indicators small is just more conducive to the style of water that we have here. Moving back in the pack, the main compartment is just where I keep my boxes. And I use a tacky double-sided box for my main nymph storage. Completely depleted right now. It's awful how depleted it is. But I organize by weight. I try to keep my lighter flies on this side, my brass beads, my 2.0s, my 2.4s, all on this side. I keep my 3.3s and my 4.0s and my 3.0s on this side of the box. And then I have another box that has some of my emerger patterns. Almost all brass beads are unweighted in there. Again, kind of fishing emergers or fishing really high up in the water column here. And then on top of the water column, I have my dry fly box. In the back of the pack, I keep it even more simple. I really don't have much back here. On the outside, I just have my gear keeper retractor, and I keep my net on there. And then the one big pocket here, I have just my streamer box. Pretty simple in there right now. And then what I do to organize my leaders is I use this fish pond tippet keeper, and I take old tippet spools and I roll my leaders up onto those tippet spools. And then I just take some masking tape and I label them. So right there is a 12-pound Maxima for 24 feet, and then a 2X cider on there. Really nice way to organize your leaders. Makes it really easy to spool them on and off as well. So that's just a brief overview of what Doug and I keep in our packs while we are out on the water. Again, this is constantly changing for us, constantly evolving. We're making minor tweaks as we go. So what we intended for this video to be is kind of a collaborative space. If you have a certain way that you like to organize your pack, if you see a way that we're organizing our pack that you're like, they could maybe do it this way and it'd be a little more efficient, please drop a comment down below. If you know of any blog posts, any videos, put those down below as well so that we can all kind of learn from each other and continue to become more efficient with our time out on the water. So thanks again for watching this video, and we'll see you guys on the next one.